This is Donna Paris from In the Black Canada, and you're logged on to Black Nova Scotian News because there's always more to the story. I mean, this was all new to us. There were 5 Black communities, 4 of them in Alberta and 1 in Saskatchewan. There's Breton, which used to be Keystone. There's Amber Valley. There's Wildwood, and there's Campsie, which is close to Barrhead. And then there's Maidstone in Saskatchewan. And these were people back in the early 1900s. The government of Canada was saying, we have all this land here. We need to get it cleared. We need homesteaders. So they were advertising for people to come up and homestead. They were advertising a lot in the United States and asking farmers to come. Of course, they weren't saying we want Black farmers, so they didn't actually think about the fact that Black farmers might apply, but they did. And these were people who had already left Texas and Virginia and Nebraska and places like that because of the racism and Jim Crow laws, and they went to Oklahoma. And then Oklahoma became a state, and the Jim Crow laws were instituted there. And so life was pretty bad for them. And some of them decided, this thing is happening in Canada. Let's go up to Canada and see what we can do. And I can't imagine, you've already started all over again. And now you're going to have to start all over again in a strange country. Some of the groups sent, scouts up early to check it out. Of course, they came in the summer to check it out and thought, this is pretty good. And they went back and convinced people to follow them.
And what year?
This was like between 1905 and I think 1912, 1913. By 1913, the migration was over. And that was because Sir Wilfrid Laurier, our lovely Prime Minister, who's on our $5 bill, put together an order in council. There were a lot of people complaining to him about the number of Black people that were coming. And so he put together an order in council saying, no more Black people can come. I'm paraphrasing, but...
How many did come?
About 1,500. About 1,500 came by the time the order in council. It never did pass, but letters were written and people got the message, you're not welcome here. They would do things like at the border, I think they crossed in Emerson, Manitoba, a lot of them, and other places as well, but they would be met at the border. There'd be doctors there saying, your nostrils are too wide, you're not going to be able to stand the cold. They were called deemed unsuitable for the climate in Canada. First you had to have $5 a person to come. They put it up to $50 a person. They tried all kinds of things to stop people from coming. And some people couldn't. They didn't have the money. They couldn't afford it. Some people came and went back because of the harsh conditions. But by about 1912 or 13, the migration was over.
So the people who did move, whatever became of them, or any of them still living in Canada?
Yes, there's descendants. There's one man, his name is Van Hayes. He's 86 years old. He lives in Keystone, it's Breton now, but it used to be called Keystone. He's still on the part of the original homestead that his family had. He had 9 brothers and sisters, and he's the only one who went into farming. Some of his brothers were reporters on the train and stuff like that. But he's still there on the land, and once he's gone, that's it. He's the last of the people Black people, who lived in there. Because what happened, lots of the farms weren't sustainable. It was rocky land, poor soil. It was, they were given, what was it called? I don't want to say that. But anyways, the land they were given was not the best always. And so as time went on, they had to go and find jobs elsewhere. So they would go into the city and get jobs on the railroad or get jobs, working as porters or whatever they could find to do. So as time went on, and younger people were born and they didn't want to be farmers and they didn't want to be on the land. So there are Wildwood in Wildwood in Alberta. There's maybe 1 or 2 people still on a farm, but there's no community there at all. So
do you know maybe what was the ratio of Black farmers to white farmers that migrated, and whether or not there was preferential treatment given as to who got what land? Or
no, I'm not quite sure how the land was sorted. I met a woman in Maidstone, Charlotte Williams, and she's related to Maddie Mays, who was a midwife back then. She was one of the people who emigrated from Oklahoma, and she was a midwife in Maidstone. And so she was saying that There was black farmers, there was Ukrainians, there was Polish. People had to help each other. And she said, oh, I know what I was going to say. Sorry. I met this woman, Charlotte Williams, and she was telling me that their land, when her great came to see it, said, I don't want this piece of land. And he went looking and found a better piece of land. But most of the time, I think you got what you were given. They paid $10 for it. And you had rules. You had to clear the land by a certain time. I think you had 3 years in which to clear the land, and you had to clear a certain amount of it, and if not, they would take the land back from you. So, and I don't know about in terms of ratio of white farmers to blacks. I don't know, but the difference is that when the Ukrainians came, the next wave of Ukrainians came, and the next wave of Ukrainians came, or Germans or Poles. Blacks were stopped by about 1913, as I said. The migration was stopped. So.
Did you tell me the other day that you also have plans to make this a traveling exhibit, or
yes,
this is one of many that you want to make?
This is just one of many. We have the show. We've been asked to come to Oklahoma to share the stories that we've learned about the migration to Canada, the particular stories about the Oklahoma migration. We're also going to do a show in Toronto, but that will include stories from across the country. That's the plan. Everybody that we've interviewed and we have their photo, we want to include them. We've got people from every province. We've applied for some funding to get, we've applied for some funding so that we can go to Northwest Territories in the Yukon, because David's been doing some research and discovered there's some Black history there as well. So we really want to include the entire province. We've interviewed a couple of people who grew up in Newfoundland and Prince Edward Island. We just talked about the Bob, but